Welcome to the Freedom Property Podcast, the modern real estate brand empowering excellence. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back in the studio, and today I've got the man himself, Mr. Rob Doorey, Auctioneer.
Mate, I like your interview voice. Hey, how you doing? It's Josh here. Yeah, ready coming at you.
You should know. You've been on the radio yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a few years, and in fact, we there was a period when I was on radio where we did almost talk like that. And anyone that was listening to Triple M in Brisbane, for instance, back in the mid-90s, there was a period where we used to have to open up the microphone after a song and go, FM 104 Triple M, Brisbane's best rock, as we roll into another 40 minutes non-stop. You like that?
You're good. You're good. You still got it.
No cash involved. There you go.
Absolutely. So you were on the radio, you did your podcasts, and
That's right, yeah.
just led into auctioneering, eh?
Yeah, so I've been doing auctioneering now for more than 10 years. So it started in Sydney, or the outskirts of Sydney, sort of southwest Sydney, which was, I guess, the last major job I had in radio. I was there for about 13 years and came to a juncture after being with the company for a long time and maybe getting a little bit too expensive in the market and what have you. Had to make a choice, either stick around to dual roles or look for something else. And I'd never thought of auctioneering, and I wish I had have thought about it years earlier, because when I found out about it, I went, wow, all the skills that I've learned over the last 20 odd years in radio, they transfer very well to auctioneering. Obviously, there is the legislation side of it and things like that. But as far as reading people, body language, communication, along with radio, I was a corporate MC. For those 20, 25, almost.
What was your MC
name?
Did
I say 30 years? My MC, I was still Rob Doorey, although I have got registered, by the way.
MC Rob.
I have got registered, and my kids don't like it because I said I was going to buy myself an old flatbed truck, and I was going to put on the side, it's MC Hammer.
Oh,
hey,
nice.
MC Hammer, like that. And then I was going to have on the very back, you can't touch this. And then I threatened that I was going to pick them up from school or their friends' houses. And they said, please don't do it. Please don't do it. But yeah, so ended up in auctioneering. So obviously I'm licensed in New South Wales, made the move about 8 years ago with the family to Queensland, to the GC, and haven't looked back, by the way.
It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell any more Southerners to move up because it's getting pretty tight.
Getting busy.
It is. But yeah, so auction over 2 states. I auction everywhere from as far as Evans Head, Ballina, Byron, all the way up to Airlie Beach, Mackay, and a lot in between, including with yourselves, obviously, in Redland Bay and Cleveland, which is fantastic.
Yeah, nice. So there's obviously a lot more to auctioneering, though, than just calling the auctions and, being up front in front of people and presenting. You obviously got to know a lot about real estate, and especially the negotiation part. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I guess it's, and I touched on, reading people before as well, and I think for a lot of new agents, and I say new, not necessarily in age, there is a perception about our industry and what you need to do, and it's not about listing a property. The buyers come through, they give you an amount, and you say yes or no, and that's it. There's negotiation for both sides, and it's, I'm going to make up a term now. It's empathetic negotiation. Because I really think that that's what it is. I think you've got to have a clear understanding of who you're talking to. You've got to be able to work that out fairly quickly. It's like building rapport. But in a negotiation, so understanding everyone has a different style in what's going to make them comfortable.
Do you think that negotiation part is trainable, or do you think some people have just got it and some haven't?
Look, I think there's no doubt there's the old gift of the gab, so to speak, and my father had it. I have it. I was in radio with a good friend of mine, and we had a business for a while where we trained radio announcers, and I know that the difference between the two of us at times was I could talk to anyone and everyone. Wouldn't matter what your background, who you are. But he found it a little bit tougher to do that from his upbringing, and maybe it was in his personality, maybe it was how he was brought up. I don't know. I feel very fortunate that I can maybe I can just relate to a varied amount of people. Is it trainable, though? Of course, negotiation is trainable. I mean, it just means that you start from a different place. But it's definitely trainable.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is like you say, it is sometimes having the gift of the gab, sometimes understanding and reading the room and having a bit of self-awareness, I feel. But some people are a little bit scared to ask those hard questions in the moment, aren't they?
And I think that's a really big thing. It's asking questions. I think one of the greatest mistakes is we run in like a young bull in a china shop. That we have real estate. There's a lot of trainers that talk about dialogue, and we practice our dialogue. We train ourselves to our dialogue. So we run in and we deliver that, and we think if we can deliver that and they can hear that, then we're all good.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. People rush in, they deliver it without really listening and determining, well, what is it that this person, because they're a person, they're not just someone selling or buying, they're a real human being that have things going on in their life, and we need to ask them questions to determine, well, what is it really that you're after? I don't think we can deliver a result without understanding that.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're not an auction agent, or if you don't have that skill in your bag, like you're missing so much when it being like a really good agent, because there's negotiation in a private treaty, but then there's an auction negotiation. And I think once you master that auction negotiation, the private treaty stuff becomes really simple. And it's just about, closing and asking the right questions, isn't it, in that moment?
And I guess for people that haven't sold via auction and haven't done that auction negotiation, I guess the difference is speed. It's time. But you need to be able to do it quickly, but still give people the time, if that makes sense. They need to feel like they've got the time to make those decisions. So I guess there's dialogue, there's things that we say to get them in a position quickly. But it's interesting, at the end of the day, I think the big conversation should be had prior to auction day.
Yes.
And I think that's the mistake. So we can turn up to an auction and we're doing all the work that should have been done earlier on. So if we get to an auction and we're spending a lot of time with our seller trying to negotiate with them, a buyer is at a certain position and they're not willing to move on that, maybe it means we haven't given enough feedback through the campaign. So what we see good auction agents do, there's two things that they deliver. Number one is offers through an auction campaign, may that be 3-4 weeks or whatever the term is. And it's not feedback. It's not just, hey, someone came through and they reckon it might sell for this. Because what is that? Where does that come from? Neighbours will come through. And if you've got a property, let's say it transacts at 1.5 million, a neighbour will come through and tell you, oh, yeah, this has got to be worth 1.7. Easy. Yeah, without a doubt. Because, they want their place to sell for more. That's what they want, and fair enough. We all would want that. So we've got to dig down. We've got to ask the questions. We've got to determine who these people are that are coming through an open home, what interest and why are they at the property, and then determine a figure.
So as an agent, how would you extract that offer? This podcast show is all about you, agents. It's all about giving you the tips, the tricks, the strategies to take your business and your life to the next level. I'm very passionate about helping real estate agents, and the more people that subscribe and like this show, the better guests we can get on and the more value we can bring to you. So follow us, give us a like, and tell your friends. Look forward to working with you.
So on first meeting, I wouldn't be extracting anything.
Okay.
So if they come through a property, if they ring you firstly and they inquire, ideally get them to the property. We talk about at the beginning of a campaign that our seller is emotionally attached to their property, and the buyer's not. The buyer is just talking numbers and cents in a particular area or multiple areas. If we give them too much information straight off the bat, then they can just discount that property and move on. And it's funny, people don't walk into a property looking for reasons to buy. They look for reasons not to.
Yeah.
So if we give them those reasons straight off the bat, then they're out. So ideally, we want to get them to the home to see if they like it. At the end of the day, if someone rings you up and says, oh, will they take this? Have you seen it yet? No. Well, unless you're an investor and it's a cookie cutter property, then how can you be invested in the property without seeing it? So we need to get someone there. And then once they're there, then we have those conversations. We find out who they are, what are their needs, what are they after, and give them the time to look around the property. And then in our follow-up calls, that's when really we would have those conversations. Because hopefully from the time that they have looked at the property to when you talk, they, within their family, so let's say they're a couple with a couple of kids, they've had time to actually let it sink in, that property and look, they're going to be looking at others. They're not just looking at yours.
Yeah.
And have that dinner conversation as to, gee, what do we think and which one do we like more? So when we ring up, hopefully they've had part of that conversation. And then I'd be asking them, it's what price? Any price? So I'll run through it. So my first question, well, let's just, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Rob
came through Smith Street last week. Really like it, and we'd like to make an offer.
Yeah. Wow. You're my best buy, by the way, because I don't think many people do that. Let's make it a little bit harder.
Make it a bit easier.
Let's make it.
You ring me.
So I ring you. Hey, Josh, it's Rob from Freedom Property. Mate, I saw you come through 24 Said Property over the weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, it's all right, mate. It's all right. It's definitely thinking about it. It's probably not perfect for us, but we don't mind it.
Could you see your family living there?
Look, I think it's like I say, it's not ideal, but I think we could turn it into what we wanted.
Okay. What do you think it'll sell for?
I don't know. You're the agent. What do you think it's worth?
Well, look, to be totally honest, what it's worth and what it sells for are two different things. Our sellers have decided to do an auction campaign to determine really where the market's at. They're not set on a price just yet. So you're obviously looking around and you're comparing this to other properties. What number do you think it would sell for?
I'm a little bit cautious about giving away my price at the moment because.
So not your price, just what do you think it'll sell for?
Do you think I could get it for 1.1?
Can't answer that right now, can I? Because obviously our owner, as I just suggested, hasn't actually come to that number. But at 1.1, would you pay that?
Yeah, I'd have to speak to the missus and...
Okay, well, why don't you have that conversation and come back, and if that's a number that you're comfortable with, we can put that in front of the owner and let's see what they say.
Okay, all right, nice.
That was easy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But if we do it another time and you don't give me a number, so let's say you turn around and say to me, oh, look, I think it'll sell for 1.1.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, would you pay that?
Yeah.
And then your response is,
no, yeah, not quite ready. And
and then I might turn around and say, look, I'm not saying that it'd sell for this, but at $1 million, would you see interest?
Okay.
And then we keep on going until we would work out these numbers prior. You need to have done the groundwork first. We call it your blue sky price. So what is the dream price? What is the price then? The second price is, as an agent, that you might bet your career on it.
Okay.
Yep. And then you'd have a price that is, where's the majority of the market, like a really big chunk of the market, where would they see value? And then the final price is what we call the buyer excitement level.
Yep.
So that would be about 10% below where the bulk of the market would sit.
This conversation you're having right now, is that a conversation you have with the seller, or would you have that with the agent and your team? Or
I think you do it with your team first.
Yep.
And then obviously you would have that with the seller as well, because you obviously need to determine what price you put into the back end.
Yep.
And we need to make sure that that back end price attracts people and it's not too high. So even though we're doing an auction campaign, there's still got to be a price there.
That's what I say to sellers all the time. I'm like, we don't need to worry about the price right now. All the number we need to focus on is your pivot price. And that's what goes into the back end of realestate.com. And I'd strongly recommend you put that at a level that offers excitement to the buyers to get here.
Yeah, that's right.
What level would you think would be exciting? And then when they said, give me a number, I said, would you buy this house for that right now? And they say, yeah, probably. So what's exciting? So what would be a number that's exciting? And they say, and I said, yeah, I think that would be a good place for it to start. Why don't we try there and see how the inquiry goes?
Yeah, and look, buyers buy up. They don't buy down. So if you list a property that's got a too high price on it, they just walk away. Because it's funny, if you've got 1.1 to spend, what properties are you really looking at that you would really like to buy?
Yeah, 1.3.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
So now if you put a property that really is valued at 1.1 at 1.3, you're looking at properties that are 1.3 and going, well, this is just a loader. Yeah. I'm not even going to bother looking at it. And that's why we get eyes looking online, but we don't get them any further.
I hear, let's throw out some scenarios, and I hear some of these pop up with agents at the moment, and I'm like, you need a little bit more training. Because auction it's really different for an agent, because it's not like your private treaty where you meet people on Saturday and you're trying to close the deal Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Like if the buyer is cashed up, good to go, then for sure, let's potentially be open to that. But if you've got multiple people at that level, then this is why you're auctioning the property in the first place.
That's right, that competition.
So remember why you're auctioning the property. I think a lot of agents, they like put an auction tag on it and then they treat it like a private treaty.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the point?
And I think there are times to sell a prior, and I think good wording when you're marketing an auction property is offers encouraged. Because at the end of the day, if we get a really strong offer, it's above the odds and it's the best for our client, for our seller, then why wouldn't we take it? As long as it's cash and unconditional, there's nothing that'll kill an auction more than a high offer that has conditions attached.
Well, how would you handle that then? So let's just say, all right, the seller wants 1.5.
Yep.
Here's me, Mr. Joe Bloggs, turn up Saturday afternoon. How much they want? You're not giving me a number. Okay, standard.
Thought it was going to be a trick question then. What's the reserve?
Yeah. Well, I hate auctions. But I'm like, what I'm prepared to do is I'm prepared to offer, around the 1.5.
Yep.
But I need 3 weeks to sort my finances out. I'd like a due diligence clause as well. And I want to get my own building and pest done.
Yeah, sure. Well, so we're selling by auction, which obviously has no conditions attached. And that's the way, for various reasons that I can't go into, personal reasons of our seller. They are the conditions that they require to allow them to move on. So you're saying you need 3 weeks. Well, we've got a 4-week auction campaign. So realistically, over the next 3 weeks, I'd be talking to whoever it is you're getting your money off, getting your ducks in a row, getting a pre-approval to the level. And then
I've spoken to the bank, though, and they said that I can't bid at an auction.
That's an interesting one. And we sometimes get that from banks and what have you. It's a furphy. It's a personal opinion because there's no reason why you can't. So what's the difference between you buying at auction with finance and buying private treaty or after auction?
Okay.
It's only timing.
Yep.
It means that you have to make sure, and this is, so for our sellers, an auction turns that process on its head. So what traditionally happens with private treaty is people will go out, they'll look at a property, they'll fall in love with it, they'll come back in this case and they'll say, hey, we love it, Josh, we're going to offer you 1.5. You take that back to the seller, they get all excited. We sign contracts with a building and pest, with a finance, with a cooling off, all these things. We take the property down, we stop marketing it, we stop talking to people, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, the buyer comes back and says, bank's just told me I can't borrow the money.
Changed my mind for no reason whatsoever.
Or they've just changed their mind. Building and pest across most states, across the country is, really, it's just a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
So all it does is put it on its head. So you're going to have buyers that will say they've been advised. It's not really true. So the best advice I can give, and we can't give financial advice, is I'd be saying have someone that that you can recommend for them to talk to. But realistically, if the question comes about that, look, my financier has said that I can't bid at auction, well, then I'd be digging down and asking the questions of what they've really said. Sometimes what happens is people will look at a property and they really have only jumped on their ANZ app, or they've spoken to their broker or their bank and said, hey, look, we got our last loan off you, where we're at, nothing's changed, how much can we borrow? And they go, yeah, go ahead. But it's not really a full valuation. You've got to go through that full process. And for our sellers, it means that our buyers are truly engaged, they are cash and they are ready to go. Otherwise, it's all hypothetical.
Yep. Do you feel like different price ranges work better for auctions?
No.
Different areas?
No. Doesn't matter the type of property, style of property, location of property, price of property. And we've proven that even just within the auctions that myself and then the team that I work with over the last 24 months. We've sold, personally, I've sold anything from a $130,000 block of land in North Queensland to a $24 million property on the Gold Coast.
Nice.
And that there have been people that, believe that at that end, you can't do auctions.
Yeah.
Well, it's not true. That property had 10 people registered.
Wow.
They're all local, not from overseas. And the underbidder, I spoke to the son afterwards, and the son said, my father said he didn't want to go over 22 million, and his last bid was only 300,000 under the 24.
Wow.
So it works at all levels. I think what people need to understand for agents, it is, and when they're explaining it to buyers and sellers, it's a method of sale.
Yes. They get too
That's
caught up
all
on
it
the
is.
day sometimes, I feel like, and so do sellers. You know, like when I sit with them, and I say, well, do you just want to sell your home, or do you want to get more money for it?
Yeah.
And they say, well, obviously we want to get the most amount of money for it. Or what if I could give you a process that would allow you to, you know, find out exactly what this property is worth and put the buyers under competition, give everybody a fair chance to buy it.
Yep.
You know, does that sound something that, you know, you'd be open to? And they're like, well, yeah, that sounds good. Well, that's an auction.
Yep. Yep.
Can I
And,
talk
and I
about
think
it?
at listing presentations as an agent, you need to have either private treaty with a price or auction in your toolbox.
Yep.
And you need to understand it enough to do what you just did.
Yeah.
So you talk about the processes
Yeah.
and then see which they're more comfortable with and which they like.
Yeah, I think if like, because you do a lot of training as well with agents, and you know, like the general how to run an auction, like you learn a lot quicker failing, like, you know, messing up an auction. You're like, I'm never going to say that again.
It's like with anything. I think you learn better on the job than you do reading
Yeah.
books. I mean, you want to get yourself to a certain position so you don't make an utter fool of yourself. But at the end of the day, you know, real estate's a funny thing. We can run the best campaigns
Yes.
and still not sell on the day.
Yeah.
May that be whatever method we're using. And we can run the worst campaigns and sometimes it sells. I mean, so I think we've got to get thick skin.
Yeah.
We just need to understand the processes.
Yeah.
We run them. And I always say to agents, look, if you get through that process and if you can hold your head up high at the end and say, I have done everything for my client I possibly can, then that's fine. And auction is all about selling pre, on the day, and post. And it's reducing days on market. It's not reducing the possibilities of what someone can get for the sale of their property.
Absolutely.
Because you're not putting out a price. And you're not losing anyone by putting it out too high and then them not looking at it as well.
I've had stages in my career where I've been like, I just want to auction everything. And like sometimes when you go in with that mentality into a listing presentation, it's very easily, you can lose that presentation.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and you have to be careful as an agent. So, you know, like you really, like I say, you got to ask these questions at the start. You got to feel out the seller. And if they want to have a crack and they want to get more money, then absolutely you should be offering an auction. And I see all the time, especially in the area that I sell, there's so many agents that won't even give them the whole menu. It's like going to a restaurant, not serving dessert. You know what I mean? I'm like, didn't they tell you about the auction?
Was I just called a dessert? I don't think I've been called a dessert for a very long time.
Entree, whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
But like, it's like they're not giving you the whole menu here.
Yeah.
And then when you explain the whole menu, an auction sounds like quite realistic to, as a seller, to maybe have a crack at, you know? So if they still don't want to go for the auction, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you, as an agent, if you don't deliver the whole menu, like, well, be careful because you will lose the listing over it. Because, you know, even if someone says to me outright, like all the time, they say, oh, look, I'm not interested in auction. I know you do a lot of auction, but I'm not interested in auction. That's okay. We don't have to auction the property.
Yep.
Would you like me to explain all the processes?
And I think the big thing for agents to understand, and there's some people that aren't going to like this, but I believe there's only two ways to sell. And I think buyers are looking for one of two things. They either want to know a price or they want to know when they can buy it.
Definitely.
That's it.
Yep.
So you put a price on it or you do auction. Anything else without a price on it is just a coward's auction.
Absolutely.
You know, we always talk about, we love, contact agent. So contact agent. So let's say you put that on your listing and I'm a buyer. I ring you up.
You know.
Hey, Josh, I'm ringing up about said property. You said to contact you.
Oh, look, you know, mate, how can I help you?
Mate, what do they want? How much do they want?
Oh, well, how much you got?
I think you might break legislation by doing that, Josh, just quietly.
But like, this is what a lot of agents do, don't they? You know, like they don't know how to handle that conversation, and they're just, you know.
And it's no price. It doesn't matter whether it's an auction, contact agent, for sale, anything without a price. You're still having what some term as an awkward conversation, but you don't get the benefits of an auction.
Yeah.
So why would you put you through expressions of interest, contact agent, for sale, any of those things? You may as well do an auction. Yeah. Run it through. At least you've got the urgency. You've got the date put on it. It's structured. Yeah. Or put a price on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't annoy people, you know. Like if it's an auction, it's an auction. Like,
still motivate people, Josh.
But you came here knowing it's an auction. You rang me knowing this property was an auction. Yeah. Like when it's no price, you can annoy the marketplace. You can annoy the buyers because they're just like, just give me a price, man. But with an auction, you are slightly protected. You can say what's been sold similar around, and you can guide the seller based off comparables, highs and lows, and you can motivate the buyers to come through the door and without annoying anybody.
Well, I think buyers are after information. If we go back 20, 30 years, the agent was there to give them the information they required, i.e., what did the place up the road sell for? I'm new to town. What do properties sell for? All that information. Or you'd look in the shop window.
Yeah.
These days, they can get all that online.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we've got to be careful of not treating our buyers as silly, because sometimes they're more hyper-focused on a particular street than even we are, and sometimes know even more. But they come to us because we're their closest contact to the seller.
Yep.
So what they really want to know is this seller motivated? Are they being realistic? And as long as we give them information of recent sales, letting them know that, hey, look, the seller has looked at these as well. They're going to be utilising these in your office through the campaign to set their reserve.
Yeah.
And that's how we need to deliver it so they understand.
Speaking of upsetting people,
here we go.
What would you say to that agent right now that bags auctions all the time?
Well, I guess the question is, firstly, I'd be asking them, well, why? What is it you don't like? And like anything, I can't have a rebuttal if I don't understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So most likely it comes from either a bad experience that they've had, or they've come through an office, or their mentor, their boss, has delivered all this bad news around auctions as well. So I think it's determining what is that bad experience, where does it come from, and answering their questions.
Yeah.
So quite often an auction may not work because of the way that they run the campaign.
Yeah. Sellers say it to me all the time. They're like, oh, the last two agents that came through, they just bagged auctions. They said not to do them. And I said, did you ask them when they did their last auction?
Yep. Yeah.
And they're like, well, they don't do any. And I was like, so how can they bag something they don't know about?
Yep.
And then they're like, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense, And
it's the same question, you asked me before about the price point of property and all the rest of it. And I mean, there can be this thing where people go, oh, well, an auction doesn't work in my town, doesn't work in my market. Yeah. Oh, it only works in the capital cities. Well, hang on a second. Why does that only work in the capital cities? There's no reason for that. All it is that in those capital cities, funnily enough, those agents have a lot more properties to pull from. There's a lot more competition.
Yeah.
They need to get the best price for their sellers to get a good name.
Yeah.
So they're using a method that they know does that. And I think if you look in the top 50, it could even be the top 100 agents of 2023, they're all auction agents.
Nice.
So when an agent says auctions don't work, well, why is it all the really good guys and girls, why do they use them?
Seriously. Yeah, auction's way more fun too, eh? Like all my best memories are from auction days, I think. Auction night.
Was that with your previous auctioneer?
Yeah. Oh, we've had some crazy negotiations, and like some that you look back on and just go, whoa, like what just happened there? Or wow, like look, I can't believe they come there.
I just have one today that I can't talk in depth about. I just had an auction today that the seller was 450,000 above what we ended up selling for. Now, interestingly enough, it wasn't a real price. They just sort of put it out there, and everyone was as shocked as anything when we took it out on the floor. We got to a much lower number, and but it was about 150, 200 above the offers through the campaign. I went back and I spoke to them and I said, well, how good's this? We've just got you nearly $250,000 more than we see through the whole campaign. How do you feel? And they said, really great. Let's sell it.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you right now, if that was private treaty, that wouldn't have happened.
No.
That wouldn't have happened.
Definitely.
Because they saw we had 4 registrations and we had 3 people bid.
Yeah.
It's real. They see it. It's transparent. For everyone involved, they can actually see the bidding. And I think there's nothing better for a seller to see bid, slowing down.
Yeah.
Slowing down. We've reached it. And then if we can get a little bit more after that, then that's fantastic. And I think for our buyers and understanding that our buyers are our next sellers.
Yep.
That's now every 3.5 years
Yep.
that they're transacting. For our agents, we need to look after our buyers, and for our buyers, they hate multiple offer.
Oh, seriously.
They hate it because they miss out. And then what do they always say?
I would have paid that.
You didn't give me another chance. Where at auction, if they don't buy, who do they blame?
Yeah, seriously.
They
Themselves.
blame themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not even a blame. They walk away and they go, oh, geez, I wish I had a little bit more money. I don't think it's worth it.
When I've always been looking at properties and I've really wanted a property and it wasn't an auction, I was just like,
Because you don't know whether you're paying too much.
and I just like all of my hopes are in the dreams are in this agent's hands right now. And I don't want it to be in the agent's hands. I want it to be in my hands as the buyer. I want to be given every single chance to buy this property. And I don't want this agent stuffing it up for me, because they're making a call about what the price is. Because they're saying, well, I got this offer week one, so obviously the right amount of money. You should definitely take that, seller. And it's like, mate, that is my dream home. I told you 2 weeks ago I was going to buy that house. I was coming all the way from Melbourne to buy that property. This is what happens with some of these.
And then you've gone and sold it from under me.
And then they turn up and they're just like, oh my God, you just don't know. You just gotta sometimes roll the dice as a seller, I think. And I've sold houses of my own at auction before, and I just felt so much better about it, you know, because it's like, all right, I tried, I did everything right. I didn't just sell it week one to the first buyer. I did everything right. There's my offer. I feel good about it. I'm going to take it. And if I don't have to. It's only been on the market 3 weeks.
And besides the auctioneer fee, which, by the way, after this is going to go up. No.
Definitely.
Besides the auctioneer fee, you've really got nothing to lose as a seller because you run your auction campaign, may it be 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever it is. And at the end of that period, if we haven't sold it prior, we haven't sold an auction day, then we put a price out on it. But here's the beauty. Over that period, we haven't lost anyone by putting a price out there and maybe scaring them, or putting a too low a price out there and underselling it.
Freedom agents, I think what we're going to do is we're going to get Rob in a little bit more. We're going to do a bit more training because, even if they're not getting auctions, I'd love for them just to understand the process.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Ins and outs, everything.
It needs to be in your toolbox.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in today, mate.
No worries, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
And looking sharp as ever, eh?
Absolutely.
Talking about him.